Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Drivery. Thank you so much for being here for Berlin City Summit 2022. Please do take your seats, get comfortable, and get ready for an exciting day full of knowledge, content, and learnings. Now, after postponing the event for a couple of years, we all know the reasons why. It's great to be back here in person at an event, and I'm delighted to be here at the Drivery, welcoming you today. Now, a bit about me. I'm Ben V. Butler. I'm the Marketing and Communications Manager for Applied Data Incubator. We have startups here in Berlin, and we help them become businesses in a 6-month program. We're actually based here at the Drivery, one of the studios. Now, Autonomy is the world's largest platform bringing innovators and policymakers together to change the way we move in cities. So ideal topic of conversation today. After a successful edition of the 2022 main exhibition back in Paris in March, Autonomy has now decided to gather you here today, decision makers, leading experts in the industry, discuss the future of mobility in the city of Berlin. So welcome as well to the Drivery. What better place to have this session today? There's 120 of Europe's fastest growing startups here in their 10,000 square meters of space. Now today wouldn't be possible without support of our partners, so please, big thank you to Berlin Partner and the mobility agency EMO. Also like to thank Hogan Lovells for being our lead partner, and Moby Miguel Jamino and Choose Paris Region for all being our content partners and helping us get the ball rolling. Now the focus today, the golden thread that weaves through all the topics of conversation will be around mobility hubs. That's the focus today. They're the physical and digital representation of the mobility system. They're the focal point for all transport. And that includes MaaS, shared service, last mile logistics, and electric energy provision as well. So thanks to Gelby, Berlin has one of the largest networks of mobility hubs in Europe and is continuously working on station expansion with their partners. Now, I'm delighted to welcome our first keynotes of the day. So please, without further ado, put your hands together for a big warm welcome to Dr. Stefan Franzke, CEO at Berlin Partner, and Patrick Iron, Global Leader in Mobility and Transportation at Hogan Lovells.
Hello, thank you very much. Good morning, dear ladies and gentlemen. A very warm welcome to the first Berlin City Summit here at the awesome location, our mobility hub, the Drivery. I couldn't imagine a better location for this event than the Drivery, where so many young and innovative companies and startups from the mobility sector are developing each day innovative ideas, services and products. Special thanks to Ross. Thank you, Ross, to being here and his team of Autonomy Paris, a mobility expert, Stefan Carsten, who organized this event. As Berlin Partners, we are very proud of hosting this very first City Summit as the official city partner and institutional partner, together with our friends from Visit Berlin and JD from the Berlin Transportation Company. We have an exciting day ahead with many interesting speakers discussing how new and sustainable mobility solutions can transform our cities to more livable places, and this must be our approach. Thus, I'm very much looking forward to exchanging our experience in Berlin and talking about best practices, but also the challenges we are facing in urban mobility. Unfortunately, I will not be able to join the full day. I have to travel to Hamburg, do other stuff. But thanks to my colleague Thomas Meissner here in the front, who will do the fireside with our French colleague Francesco from Choose Paris region later on. And I can say it's not a secret that the Choose Paris region is really something like our sister company. It's in a different city, but really our friends. Electromobility is booming in Berlin, particularly in the commercial sector. In Berlin, a percentage of almost 60% of the registered electric cars is used in the commercial sector. My colleague Tommy, Deputy Director of our internal Berlin Agency for Electromobility, will give you some broader insights into electromobility a new mobility solution afterwards. But it's not just about e-mobility. I think it's about the transformation of the whole automotive sector to a more software-driven approach. Many international IT developers and talents are living and working in Berlin. That's one of the reasons global players like Tesla, and we are very proud of them, but also many startups have chosen their location in the capital region. It's also about rethinking the way of getting from A to B. We are very proud of Berlin being the sharing capital of Germany with more than 20 sharing companies and over 50,000 shared vehicles, really a big number. Using service like JD, you easily get from A to B by a multimodal use of different means of transportation without a private car. And if you didn't download it yet, please do it, because Yeri is a really cool app if you want to travel here in Berlin. You can see there's a lot of going on that can be discussed with this summit. And in this sense, I wish you all a successful day and a successful event with interesting exchange, and want now to hand over to Patrick. Thank you very much, and enjoy the day at the summit.
Thank you very much, Stefan. I'm very excited to be here in Berlin. Actually, my mother is from Paris. I love Berlin, and I work in the mobility space, so this is my event. So I would like to thank really Ross and the whole team for bringing autonomy now also to Berlin. We talked about it like 2 years ago when we were here in Red. I mean, you had all the ideas and you are reaching out also to other countries and cities. So now we're in Berlin, which is really exciting. And I also like to thank Stefan, you did it already, very much for curating all of this and with the great content that we can see here. To me, two things are very important: diversity and collaboration. And Berlin is a very diverse place. We talked about it 5 or 10 years ago when everyone was complaining about Berlin. I always said I really truly believe in Berlin and the power of Berlin in the future. I think this is a fantastic city in Europe and it has a bright future. Yes, it is still somewhat struggling, but you are one of the reasons why it is turning to something really innovative and good. And I mean, all of you are working in somehow in an innovative environment, and this place here is really amazing. I love it here. And the other thing is collaboration. I think and this is also why we are here. Obviously we are lawyers, so why are we here? It's all about collaboration to me. It's the industry, the policymakers, the investors, and when it comes to the future and the future of mobility, you also need some regulatory framework, which is why, unfortunately, you may also need one or the other lawyer to shape the regulatory framework. So the most important point is that we all work together on the future of mobility, and this is an ideal event to talk about the future of mobility. So I'm very much looking forward to the discussions today, and have fun.
Excellent, lovely warm words there. Thank you so much to both Berlin Partner and Hogan Lovells for starting our session today. Now folks, it is great to be here at a physical event once more. As I mentioned at the start, it's been a little while since we've been able to get into a room together. It's been a difficult moment, but we're here. And I, for one, am not going to miss the Zoom conversations. When the camera isn't working correctly, when the microphone isn't working, when you say to a colleague, we can't hear you. And then when you have that course in pitch, that really important event for all your employees, and you're about to say the most important thing of the meeting, an unstable internet connection. I'm not going to miss those days. So it's great to be here at the Drivery with you all and with autonomy. Now, I'm delighted to welcome to the stage the man who's been mentioned a couple of times already today, Ross Douglas, CEO and founder of Autonomy, who will say a few words and welcome you here today. So please.
So just a quick welcome to all of you. It's really nice to be in Berlin. I came here 2.5 years ago and it was such an amazing location. I wanted to do an event in the Drivery, and then obviously COVID came and we've been postponing this event 3 or 4 times, and so it's great to be here post-COVID. Just to quickly, I'd also like to thank Polis Network. Karen from Clues will speak later, but Polis Network has been an old friend of Autonomy, and Karen has been a really great collaborator and partner. And Polis Network is hugely valuable in the mobility ecosystem and the work they do. From my side, the one point I want to talk about is that the focus of today, it's sort of very sort of hard and direct focus, is on mobility hubs. And obviously there's been a lot of talk of mobility hubs, but there hasn't really been a lot of momentum. There is now some movement in cities like Berlin, and Stefan has written a long Berlin City report, which we'll make available on our website later. But the idea of a mobility hub effectively is aggregating supply and demand. And in all forms of business, what we see is shopping malls aggregate supply and demand. And mobility hubs could play a massive role in aggregating that supply and demand. And I think what I've seen, having been in this business for 6 or 7 years, is that it's the first time that policymakers are talking about the need to reduce energy consumption. Before, it was always about the need to transition from combustion fuels to electricity. And now what's happening because of the Russian invasion is that policymakers are realizing that we need to radically reduce our energy consumption. And I think that's going to really accelerate the need for new mobility solutions that are shared, that are lighter vehicles, that is more active mobility. And the place of mobility hubs will become increasingly important, where people can walk to a mobility hub, have a choice of shared mobility solutions that fit that specific journey. At Autonomy, what we like to try and do is generate content, generate conversations. So it's great that you're here. It's great to have friends and colleagues from Paris coming to Berlin. Some of our Paris clients are here, wanting to obviously meet Berlin companies. And the idea is that we'll do this event each year and try and bring some of our community together in a different city. So the focus of the city summits is to be in European capitals, in interesting locations, and obviously Berlin and the Drivery is a great start. So thank you very much, and thank you very much to the team at Autonomy, to Caroline and Frank in particular. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ross. And so, let's get mobility moving today, this morning. I'm delighted to say we're now going to have City Hour. So Berlin as an innovation hub for mobility from EMO. And this is the very heart of the subject we're discussing today. And we're going to have several presentations to look at those most important questions around the future of urban mobility that Berlin is and will face in the upcoming years. So I'm delighted to welcome shortly to the stage Thomas Meisner, who will be speaking on behalf of EMO. Now, EMO supports the Berlin economy in the context of mobility transition as a competence centre for electric mobility and new mobility solutions. The testing of climate-friendly, innovative mobility solutions with and for the Berlin economy. So please put your hands together and a warm welcome for Thomas Meisner, Head of Division Mobility Energy Innovation for Berlin partner of EMO.
Very good. So thank you very much for your kind introduction. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. I'm very pleased to give you some insights into the Innovation Hub for Mobility Berlin. Not the whole picture, of course. I try to be very brief in about 20 minutes to give you some insight what is interesting and also can stimulate our discussion afterwards. So, what is, I try to move forward. Okay, it's working. So, what is in Berlin's favor? So, top reasons for Berlin. Last year, or for last year, EY reports about 10 billion euro private investment on Berlin-based startups. This is 3 times more than the year before, and it is almost 60% of the private startup investments in Germany and throughout Germany. So clearly Berlin is on the top level in Germany. It's the top hub for startup activities, and even in Europe, the so-called startup heat map Europe told that Berlin was named, or they named Berlin as Europe's top city for startups. This is of course true for the whole range of startups coming from every branch, but is also the case for mobility startups. Then we have, of course, decision makers in the city, business opportunities I already mentioned. Very important for the innovation hub in mobility as science and research, of course. We have about 200,000 students in Berlin. We have more than 10 universities and universities of applied science. And we have more than 30 state-owned research institutions, for example, from the Fraunhofer Society, which often has which are often very relevant to mobility innovations. So what is Berlin Partner doing to support the mobility innovation hub? Berlin Partner, as Chairman Franzke already said, is the integrated business promotion agency working on behalf of the city and the state of Berlin. It is organized as a private-public partnership, PPT. We have a network of about 240, 250 organizations, mainly private entities. They are important stakeholders for Berlin Partner, and they contribute to the financing, to the budget. Yeah, what does integrated means? Integrated business promotion agency. That means connecting business promotion, marketing activity, the capital marketing, and innovation strategy. So what you can see here, cluster management and technology transfer, this is basically what we are doing to bring companies, research institutes together for innovative projects to promote the innovation hub for mobility in Berlin. So this is one of our basic tasks. Yeah, so innovation strategy, what is this all about? I think that is the wrong order. I go to this one. Yeah, so in Berlin, Berlin is pursuing some strategies that stimulates and influences innovation in the field of mobility. And these are, for example, the Berlin Mobility Act. This is somehow unique. I think this act, Mobility Act, was the first Mobility Act in Europe here. The final sections on new mobility and on commercial transports will be concluded probably this year still, and the other chapters, like for pedestrians and for biking, active mobility and public transport, are already in place, are already in force. We have the city development plan for mobility and the integrated commercial transport concept. They complement the Berlin Mobility Act and the Berlin Energy Climate Protection Program. That includes a lot of activities and measures in order to support Berlin becoming climate neutral by the year 2045. This is now the target. And we then have the innovation strategy, as I already mentioned. And what it is all about? Innovation strategy, it is two-folded, to say so. It combines Berlin as a kind of a test bed for innovations, leading innovation area in Europe. This is the ambition. The pilot city for innovations on the one side, and on the other side, it is important for us to also to create value on the regional level with innovations in mobility, research, manufacturing, and scaling up, of course. So not just have application, but also have the manufacturing of the development of innovative solutions for mobility in this area here with the innovation strategy. So, innovation strategy at a glance, everything in one picture, and I just want to mention transport, mobility, and logistics on the right side. This is one of the 5 so-called innovation clusters here in Berlin, and it includes a lot of companies, a lot of employees, and turnover. This is the fundament, to say so. This is according to the economic statistics. If you look on the innovative top of them, you will end up with about 800 companies, so 5% basically. And these 800 companies that dominates the innovation landscape, these are the companies of different scale, including startups, of course, which actively contribute to cluster activities and which are willing to realize innovation projects in the cooperative manner with research institutes, for example. So this is the so-called the cluster domain, these 800 companies here. The thematic guardrails, to say so, of the cluster are defined by the master plan. So that's a kind of a strategic document for the next 5 to 7 years, not a vision for the next decades, but for mid-term horizon, basically. And it is important to know that this strategy is a strategy of the stakeholders. It's not a strategy of the cluster management. More than 250 experts have contributed to this strategic document, and you just see some the basic overview here. Of course, there is much information behind, and you can see what are the main focus innovation fields are here in transport, mobility management, automation and connection is an important part, vehicle technologies, immersion technology, and of course, you will find electromobility there. So, in addition to so in addition to the cluster work we are performing, there are a few factors that are definitely critical for the Innovation Hub Berlin. And we took out 4 here. You can see that global corporation, global corporates, global players have chosen Berlin to the implementation of their startup and Innovation Hub. And there are a lot of automotive companies, but also other mobility companies that are doing the same. So you can see some names here, a little bit small. Daimler, for example, Volkswagen, Porsche, Deutsche Bahn, German Railway is involved here, but many others. This is just a selection. At the same time, a lot of these companies, mobility companies, established their new research development departments, particularly for ICT and for software in Berlin, and they are doing this for purpose, in order to profit from the startup ecosystem here in Berlin. They didn't do it in their headquarters site, they did it in Berlin. So we have an example of campus mobility to grid, that's an RTD-driven hub, also being an important part for the mobility landscape here, for the innovation ecosystem here. And last but not least, we have more than 120 innovation labs, accelerators, incubators, taking care about startups, and some of them, a few of them, are definitely oriented towards, or dedicated to mobility, and the probably most famous one is this place here, the Drivery, which not just allow the software development, but also hardware makerspace. And this is important for a lot of the startups in the mobility arena. So that Tesla was already mentioned. So this all contributed, at least for some extent, to the largest industrial investment in Germany for the recent years. So Tesla, not really in Berlin, it's just a bit outside, it's nearby Berlin, a few kilometers away from the city border. The final approval was granted some 2 months ago, so nowadays the serious production is in the ramp-up phase, so step by step. They hired about 2,500 people so far. The final approach should be 12,000 jobs in engineering, construction, production, but also in marketing. And there's a battery factory besides, and this is still in construction and will be the biggest one in Europe of its kind. So really a center of electromobility is now established here. Of course, this Tesla Gigafactory will have much implications for the industrial landscape in the capital region in the coming years, so you can't underestimate that, to say so. We are very lucky, we are very happy about it. So, yeah, coming to the EMO, Berlin Agency for Electromobility. EMO is a part of the Berlin Partner Organization, and it is an important player in the mobility innovation ecosystem in Berlin. It is somehow complementing cluster activities here. So EMO was founded in 2011, already more than 10 years ago, in order to coordinate electromobility projects in Berlin. And some of you probably still have in mind the biggest one. There was a big showcase for electromobility in Berlin-Brandenburg some years ago. It started in 2012 up to 2016-17 with more than 30 projects, more than 100 project partners, at a budget of about 70 million euro coming from 4 different federal ministries in Germany. So this was a really big shot, very complex, but it was necessary in order to establish the first step to ramp up electromobility here in the region, Berlin-Brandenburg. So, as I said, Berlin Partner operates a network. The same is for EMO. It's kind of a sub-network of companies, institutions, associations that are particularly interested to contribute to electromobility, but also to new mobility activities a bit outside the e-mobility. And it includes startup companies. Here, what you see in the middle, in the club, these are the startups in the mobility arena, then scale-ups and well-established companies, as well as networks. So there's also about 70 partners, and they also contribute to the financing of the EMO, and the rest is coming from the state. So what activities, just brief networking, initiation of project, communication and guidance for those who are interested in electromobility. And here you see a few numbers of the status we actually have in Berlin and Brandenburg. From the beginning this year we had 3,000 public charging points for electric vehicles in both Bundesländer. 60,000 electric vehicles, plus 2,000 coming from the car sharing, as Stefan Franzke said here, about 50,000 vehicles in total for sharing activities, and these are mainly the ones of the right side here, the two-wheelers. No? They're much more two-wheelers than four-wheelers with cars, no? And they're all electric. So, what is the development with historical figures coming from a very low basis, to say so. This is a vehicle stock. This is just Berlin. So 36,000 vehicles at the end of last year. Nowadays we will have a few thousand more. 50% is battery electric vehicles. The other 50% is plug-in private vehicles. But this relation changed in favor to battery electric vehicles. So what is the share? It's just 3%, not so much on the first glance. The ramp-up curve now is stable, as we can see here in the meantime, but whereas we are still away from the future targets, of course. 3% of the vehicle stock is now electric. It is important to know, and I think the same is for Paris as well, that Berlin has by far the lowest car density in Germany. You have about 320, 330 cars per 1,000 inhabitants, and that's much lower than in other cities, of course. And therefore, we have a population that is open for experiments. So, but there is still something to do, of course. In coordination with the Berlin Senate and other stakeholders, EMO further developed its scope the last year. It is still electromobility, but complemented by other subjects relevant for sustainable future urban transport, which you can see here. Besides the energy transition and transport, it's multimodality and sustainable commercial transport. And the horizon has changed a bit, moving a bit away from the research focus to the implementation and to scaling up. So we are now in a new phase of scaling up electromobility and others in Berlin. So, first of all, coming to the energy transition and transport, the ambition is given by the first bullet point: provision of charging infrastructure in line with the demand, and that basically means for EMO to attract stakeholders to invest in charging infrastructure on private grounds mainly. That could be supermarkets, could be filling stations, real estate enterprises, commercial fleet operators. All these have the potential to install charging infrastructure on their ground. And as Stefan Franzke already said, it is more B2B oriented, business to business, rather than business to customers or private customer. So and above that, the EMO is also involved in the nowadays working of the master plan for charging infrastructure in Berlin. So just very quick look on multimodality. This is two-folded. The first one is corporate mobility management in order to stimulate sustainable and efficient organization of mobility for companies. And the second is intelligent transport system, basically autonomous and connected driving with shuttle buses, complementing the established public transport and mass transport. And this, of course, has considerable parts and research share still. It's not just application, also research. And these are the projects we had in Berlin during the last 5 to 6 years. Number of research projects with testbeds for autonomous driving that has been implemented to validate the technology, to involve the users, and also to test and to further develop the regulatory framework. So some of these projects have been financed by the state of Berlin, and some have been financed by the federal ministry. So Mobility Hub, the YENBI, this will the subject of the next presentation, so I can go on this. And coming to the last point, sustainable commercial traffic. The key keywords are electrification of vehicles for commercial fleets. The second keyword is last mile activities, last mile innovations by micro depots, and using of operation of light electric vehicles in the city center. And finally, sharing of commercial fleets. It's also a subject with sustainability and efficiency potential. So in Berlin, some of the state-owned companies, they share their electric vehicles in order to be more efficient and more sustainable. And this is my final picture. Here you see some locations of micro depots, most of them in the city center. One is not far away from here, a bit north of this site, and they are evolving. So this is just the beginning. Yeah, so I hope this gives you a bit of insight into what we are doing in Berlin, and can stimulate the discussion afterwards during the day. So thank you very much for your attention.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Thomas, for that fascinating insight. Thank you. And I've been on those buses, folks. They're very exciting and very unusual not to have a driver on board. So I'm delighted to welcome now sorry folks, that's my alarm. We're on time. So I'm delighted to say now our next keynote part of City Hour is from Gelbi. Now Gelbi brings mobility diversity to more districts of Berlin, creating an alternative to the all-rounder car, and with that enabling more people in the growing city to live without their own car and thus becoming a one-stop shop for urban mobility. Next one. So I'm delighted to introduce Deputy Head of Gelbi, Michael Bartnick.
Hi, Michael Bartnick, that's my name, as you can read. And first of all, thank you very much for this very warm welcome, for this very warm introduction, Stefan Franzke, one of the biggest networks in Europe. Wow, who expected this 3 years ago when we opened our first YELBI station in Berlin? Thank you for the invitation, Autonomy. We had an amazing time in Paris, and Drivery, good to be here again, because the Drivery is one of our premium partners. During the break or at the end, check our YELBI station outside, and then you can rent a vehicle for going home or just to test drive. But first of all, I want to show you how we bring the YELBI mobility diversity to the outskirts, because for a long time, like in every city, Even in Berlin, it was concentrated in the city center. That's what we have now, 50 Jäbi stations and smaller Jäbi points. And you see, we grow in the outskirts and we reach already 150,000 people in the outer city. So what's the story behind? Let's start with our mission. Our idea, our vision is to say, you don't need something like a car. With a car you can go to the bakery early in the morning, bringing the kids to school, traveling to work or for holidays. No, we have for all needs you have, we have the right vehicle. Of course, if you commute to work, use public transport, you have your flat rate, your abonnement. Maybe a car sharing if you have something to transport short ways, two-wheelers, bicycles, e-scooters, or after a hard club night, maybe Bergkönig for the way home. Well, and you find all these mobility options only in one app, in our Jäbi app. And 3 years ago, we were maybe not the first, but one of the first apps with this deeply integration of all these mobility options. So you register once and you don't jump to another app. You have your booking, your payment, driver license, everything in one app. Nowadays, we already have 55,000 vehicles in the Jäbi app you can book. We already learned a lot of e-scooters, a lot of car sharing, not that much. And these are all the buses and trains from BVG, S-Bahn Berlin, Deutsche Bahn, or the other train companies. And if you compare this, how much sharing mobilities we already have in Berlin. I don't know the exact number, maybe until now we have 70 or 80% already deeply integrated. We learned in Paris, Berlin is the capital of sharing mobility if you count the number of mobility options, but Paris is the capital if you count the number of vehicles. So until now, all these 25, 28 sharers in Berlin said we are interested in becoming part of Jäbi Alliance. We have a process, we are a public company, we always need a process, and all these blue companies said they give a formal expression of interest, and now step by step we integrate them. Well, why 50 in 3 years? We had a trick. We have large mobility hubs like outside with car sharing. You see our charging points. This is the complete program. And we have smaller sisters, our Jäbi points for two-wheelers, for micro-mobility. There you can find bicycles, scooters, mopeds, and maybe in some months some cargo bikes. What's the story, what's the mechanic behind bringing all these mobility options to the outskirts? This is a story we learned during the years. We are not only a network of mobility providers, we are also a network of facility partners, like housing companies, like employers, like shopping centers. We have a hospital, wow, and some different partners. And they are interested in our Jäbi stations. They give us facilities for build them. They give us channels for communication so we can give all the information to the employees, to the tenants, to the customers. Here, use this wide range, this diversity of mobility options, and then you don't need a car anymore. And sometimes they spend mobility budgets, mobility vouchers, and so we have the demand for our mobility providers to go to the outskirts. Of course, everybody knows the way is longer and the operation costs are rising and the opportunity costs are sinking because one vehicle is maybe rent less per day. Our pilot was Spandau, Waterkant. We opened during the most stupid time. It was Christmas 1.5 years ago. It was second lockdown, Christmas holiday, winter with snow. Yeah, and altogether it was much too early because we thought, let's go step by step by step by step to the outskirts. But our facility partner, Gewobag, a housing company, said, no, now, please, now. The people are moving because they built a new district, a low-car district. And they are already planned in the middle of this district. We need a mobility hub. Okay. By the way, we had a workshop, very nice workshop. We had a wooden model, and so we had a good imagination of this new area. So having one mobility hub in this new area, okay, then the people will go by car sharing to the city center. Nothing won, because they already go by car. So next step was to build another Jäbi station at the underground, U7, to having first last mile connections to the high-speed system. And then, third step, okay, it's Spandau. Berliners know there's nothing you want in Spandau, just coming back to Berlin. But maybe that's not true, because it's very nice, it's green, it's blue, very close to a river. Maybe the people like their new area and they go for a walk, they go shopping. The lovely Gartenfelder Straße is Kudamm of lovely Hasselhorst. You have a factory and different hotspots with a special demand. And that's why we decided, okay, let's build some smaller Jäbi points, because maybe there is a further demand and we need a framework that the scooters are bundled there and not everywhere in this area. We did it. We got our permission from Bezirk Spandau, and the Gewobag started their communication campaign. A mobility booklet for everybody. They spent 50 euros starting vouchers. Wow, that's good. Just to say, come to Waterkant, but please without an own car. And so, you will see later, it's one of the best working mobility network, Jäbi network in Berlin. Yeah, we see that vouchers and mobility budgets are something like a door opener. So, until now we have 2 or 3 of those voucher campaigns. We tested our first mobility budget pilot with Bundesdruckerei, and this is what you can see. These are the heroes of Corona time. These are people from Charité Hospital, and they waited long queuing just to get their 55 euro Jäbi voucher to test all these new mobility options. Yeah, and that you trust what I say, you can see these are the rents per day, per month. The bigger the circle, the more rents we have. And you see, this is Jäbi Waterkant in the west, in Spandau. This is the underground station. It's very similar to our city center locations, and long time Neuendorfplatz was our best performer, but now Wuhletal it is. Is there anybody who knows Station Wuhletal? The Berliners. For the mobility experts, it's very interesting because one platform for underground and S-Bahn. just if you're interested. So that's our future program. Now we work in behalf of the Senate Department for Urban Mobility, Climate, and something else. So we work for the city of Berlin, and we said, let's test Yabi until end of 2025. And let's choose some different other districts to test Yabi. So you see, we will have more of these Yabi networks in the city center, and of course around the city center from west to east. Maybe this can be the next this summer. Yeah, that's it. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you so much for that. I am on the weekend going to take, not really time, but thank you. Yes, on the weekend I'll be going to Spandau. You've sold it to me. It's a place I haven't been to enough in Berlin. Now folks, I saw a couple of you taking photos during the last two keynotes, so please do share them on social media across all the networks and use the hashtag Berlin City Summit 22. Now, to conclude our city hour, I'd like to say we have a fireside chat, so gathering, get yourselves warm next to the fire, and that fire is conversation and knowledge and sharing insights. Now in this exciting 30-minute chat, I'm delighted to say we're going to welcome Thomas Meisner back to the stage, and alongside Francesco Travelli, Head of Tech Industries at Choose Paris Region, and somebody in this industry who needs no introduction but will moderate this session is Karen Van Klusen, Secretary General of Polis Network. So please, welcome them all to the stage.
Thank you very much for the introduction, and welcome back to you on stage, and welcome to you as well, all the way from Paris. So I'm Karen Van Kluisen, I'm the Secretary General of Polis, and Polis is a European network of cities and regions working together on sustainable urban mobility and innovation. I'm happy to say that both Berlin and Paris and Ile-de-France are active members of the Polis network. We have innovation as a key angle in our activities, and we strongly believe as a city network in the governance of innovation. What we consider to be a smart city is not a city that is just jumping on any and every technology that is coming its way, but is first looking at the policy goals it wants to achieve and the challenges it wants to tackle, and then looks at which innovations and technologies can help them to reach those goals and tackle those challenges. So innovation as such is a means to an end from our perspective. At the same time, we also realize that we do not just need the governance of innovation, we also need the innovation of governance. We need our governance systems to become more innovative, to become more agile, and to strike the right balance between allowing innovation to thrive, but also making that innovation aligned with policy goals and policy responsive, rather than having it disrupt or undermine those policy goals, which sometimes happens as well, as public and commercial interests are not necessarily or not automatically aligned, at least. And these are some of the topics I would like to discuss with our distinguished guests here. So we already met Thomas Meisner through his very interesting introductory presentation on the leading work that Berlin and Berlin Partner and EMO are doing here in the region. And then next to him we have Francesco Travelli, who is Head of Tech and Industries at the Choose Paris region. And Berlin Partner and Choose Paris region are similar entities, let's say, in the sense that they both try to attract innovation and investment to their respective regions. I'd like to zoom in first on that particular dimension, maybe starting with Paris, and afterwards I'd like to further talk a bit more about the concrete mobility angle and dimension of your activities, Thomas. So starting with you, Francesco. So you work for Paris region, you try to attract international companies, and let's focus on the mobility industry in particular now, to enter the French markets. What opportunities do you see in your region in particular for international mobility companies, and what advice would you give to them?
Thank you for this question, and first of all, thank you very much for the invitation here with you today. Is a real pleasure to share all this information with you and to discuss about mobility in the Choose Paris region. The main opportunities in Paris right now for mobility are, first of all, related to mass transit. We have a huge project going on, which is called the Grand Paris Express in Paris. We are talking about doubling the size of the Parisian metro in the region. So we are adding 200 kilometers of transportation of trains in over around 68 new stations, and everything will be autonomous. It's a massive project, it's one of the biggest in the world right now for mobility. So any company connected to this type of transportation could provide services or hardware or solutions for this type of process would be extremely welcome, and there are huge amount of opportunities related to that. Only to give you an understanding, only related to the renovation of buses and trams, we are talking about 12 billions of investments related to that area. So this is one great area of opportunity. Another great area of opportunity is related to clean transportation. So we are massively investing on clean transportation. As I was saying, making the fleet of buses electric. We plan by 2025 to have 5,000 buses which are completely electric, so carbon neutral. With all the infrastructure that goes behind it, so all the charging places for the buses and also the cars related to that. So our objective is to be to ban diesel car in the Paris city by 2025, and to ban carbon cars in the region by 2030. So anything related to clean mobility, well, actually there are many opportunities in the region. Another important field for opportunity is new form of mobilities. So I'm talking about cars, but not only. Other mobilities, vehicle would be extremely welcome in the Paris region. And we don't have to forget the fact that Paris is a real hub of companies and of people. We are talking about 40 million trips per day in the region. So there are massive opportunities for development, and when we enter this type of market, it gets right away very big for a company, because we have a massive market for mobility. These are the main opportunities, and if I can share some advices for companies that want to enter the Parisian market, want to enter the Paris region market, it would be to interact with local stakeholders. That's extremely important. With policymakers, with local stakeholders, we are building the policies, we are defining the plans. So it's very important that the companies that come there get right away active and talk to the right people to be part of it, also to do some lobbying related to their own company and their solution, so that we can design together what will be the outcome and what will be the roadmap to achieve the general objective of the region. So that's very important. Get extremely local. We have, as for Berlin, as for London, there are specificity around the city. There are specificity in the whole region. So it's very important that you get local, that you speak with the right stakeholders, and you understand each and every specificity of a territory, which is very diverse. We come from the city center to the suburban area around, so there are different challenges to tackle. And Choose Paris region is as the full place there is the objective of Choose Paris region is to help you to understand the local ecosystem, to help you to get in touch with the right people, to give you the right information, to propose you the solution, to get to the market, and to enable you to have a soft landing in the region.
Very interesting what you're mentioning there. We know, of course, that Paris is a leading region when it comes to implementing and deploying innovations, but this aspect that you mentioned as well, in terms of local specificities and interaction with stakeholders from day one, if not day zero, I think is really instrumental, and we've seen that this has improved throughout the years with the first generation of new mobility services like the colorful bike share schemes coming from China. They were literally being deployed overnight in cities without any conversation or dialogue whatsoever with the public authorities, and we've also seen that this is not sustainable over time from a business perspective for them either. And it's something that we are investing in a lot as well with Polis, to facilitate that dialogue between the public and the private sector and see what type of cooperation can work best. In the introductory presentations that we saw, in that respect, also regulatory frameworks were being mentioned. I'd like to turn to you, Thomas, when it comes to regulatory frameworks. What is Berlin doing to also make sure that these innovations that you're attracting, these new mobility services that are being deployed, align with your policy goals?
First of all, I can clearly underline what Francesco said to the point. Involve yourself, if you're coming to Berlin with your business ideas, involve yourself into regional networks of scientific institutes, of the politicians, of course, the authorities, and organizations like Berlin Partner. This is really a key factor. What you asked for the regulatory framework. So, to our mind, it's important to go and to start the dialogue very early between the authority and the private, not normally private, owned companies that offer new mobility services. Francesco, you mentioned the problems you had with the scooters, electric scooters and electric two-wheelers. In Berlin we have the same situation. They are all coming to the city center, they want to create their business. In the city center it's now very crowded. This is not definitely in line with the Berlin transport policy, which have also to serve the outer area of the city. And now the dialogue has started some time ago in order to stimulate these companies also to go to boroughs that are a bit away from the city center, in order to provide the services for the population there as well. In the city center of Berlin, that is about 100 square kilometers. It's basically the S-Bahn ring with 1.1 million inhabitants, roughly. But Berlin as a whole has 3.7 million. So most of the people are living outside the inner city center, and therefore it's important to provide them new mobility services as well. I mentioned in my speech the Berlin Mobility Act. This is probably somehow unique, but one of the first of these approaches that the city tries to establish really an act, a law for mobility. And this has, of course, implications because then you have, as in the authority, as a city, you have more power to align the service provider into the target corridors of the transport policy in the city.
I think the point, you want to pick up on that?
Yeah, I would like to add something. Talking about the e-scooter and also about the Mobility Act. We have something similar in Paris, which is called the Law of Orientation Mobility, which actually connect the city to the fact, to its objective of being a clean city on transportation by 2030, to be the full region clean on transportation. And when it comes to policy, in fact, what we decided to do is that to have a local body, which is called Île-de-France Mobilité. Île-de-France is the name of the Paris region. But what they do, actually, they have action power in the region to regulate and to give the possibility to private companies to make public-private connection to operate in the region, whether it is transportation or e-mobility or it is actually charging, to all the topics related to mobility. And something that I did very interesting about the scooter is also because I believe that the public entities, when we are talking about these topics, very innovative in mobility. And what they have also to do is to monitor the competition around. So something interesting that they did, in fact, is that they limit the competition for e-scooters. And this gave the possibility to some of them to actually develop and not to kill themselves through a rude competition. We know what happened very often for very innovative startups. The American, in the Western, they say, is the early bird who get the worm, but it's the second mouse who get the cheese. So we know what happened to the first mouse. And it's actually what might happen often to very innovative startups. So the fact of regulating the competition and of helping very innovative startups break through in the market, that actually is very helpful, and it is also policymakers who have the roles of making this possible.
I think Paris has definitely been exemplary and still continues to be when it comes to increasingly regulating these new mobility services. And what I think is interesting is also that we see that we're going through a kind of trial and error phase in that respect. And I think it's also fine to do that, to have this sandboxing environment where we see what works from a regulatory perspective and maybe what is less successful, but also from a business perspective to really strike that balance. And we've also been promoting the work you've been doing in Paris to other cities in our network. I'd like to come back to your reference to Île-de-France. So you are dealing with Île-de-France mobility, you're dealing with the Île-de-France region, you're dealing with the Paris region, you're dealing with the city of Paris. How challenging for you as an agency is it to have to deal with different local public entities which are not necessarily of the same political color?
Yeah, that is a challenge. The fact of having all these layers, which actually have less than before in the recent years, because we had some reform that made it possible to have less layers of regulation, actually is a challenge. Still there are some. We have less than before, but still there are some. And sometimes they are not the same political color, so it makes it even more challenging. But what I have to say is that when it comes to these topics related to, for example, mobility, the operational people that actually make the project possible, they can work together and they don't change every 5 years as the politicians. So they build long-term relationships and have a roadmap over many years that enable them to be efficient and actually impactful in the project that they manage to deploy.
Okay, good to hear that in that respect they are aligned. So coming back to you, Thomas, you were talking about suburbia, basically. The outskirts, which tend to be overlooked in many cases when it comes to the deployment of new mobility services, for example, whereas actually the level of car dependency is much higher compared to the urban cores and city centers where a lot of services are available already, and public transport is very strong. So it's something that we have really been advocating for as well, looking at new mobility services to fill the gaps that cannot be met by mass transit. But could you tell us a bit more about how you managed to convince the private sector as well? Are you also looking into new types of business models, public-private partnerships, or even subsidies to make it commercially viable for those services to go into suburbia?
Yes, I would like to, if you talk about the less dense areas in the city, the outskirts or the boroughs away from the city center, there's one interesting point. I mentioned this in my slides already. The autonomous and connected driving, not for cars, but for shuttle buses that complement somehow the mass transit or the traditional public transport. So this could be a solution for some extent, but probably not for everything, but could be a solution to make public transport more attractive for those normally using a car, because the mass transit system is not so much deployed there in these areas. So, and I think Berlin, we belong to the pilot cities that are testing and using this also for a couple of years. We started 5 to 6 years ago. First of all, on private ground because this is easier. But nowadays, the test operation, the pilot operation, are also on public streets. So the regulatory framework allows that for some extent. So some experimental clauses can be applied there. And I think it is important to test them. You mentioned sandboxes. So this is a kind of a sandbox where you not just test the technical development or the technology and involving the users, but also to test what the regulatory framework is able to allow to the operator, and to give hints to gain some hints and indicating to what has to be further developed on the regulatory framework. So we are not at the end, but we progressed with these regulations the last years, and in Berlin we feel we are on the top level to implement this, and that could solve the problems in the outskirts for some extent.
Yes?
Yeah, I wanted to add something because I totally agree with Thomas on that, and I think the real challenge, as the region is so diverse, the Berlin region or the Paris region are so diverse, is to identify for each and every part of the region the right solution, which would include public subsidies for the companies, also financial helps and subsidies for the end user to adopt certain types of solution, and all the infrastructure and the facilities that goes with that. So the combination of the three, in fact, has to be adequate and adapted to each and every part of the region. It cannot be the same in every part, so we have to adapt it to the local needs of the population, of course, because at the end of the day, when it's done, we will use the services that we propose them and that the companies provide.
And are you looking into subsidy types of schemes or new public-private partnerships to deploy services across the region according to the specific needs you are mentioning?
Well, we have, in terms of subsidies, we have for innovative companies. So we have something which is called Innovat, which is a regional subsidy for innovative company that would help them to finance their R&D investment, but also the prototyping, the economic viability of what they propose. We are talking about grants that go from 500K to 3 million for companies of expenses to finance their expenses. So this is something which is regional and will be used to help the companies. Then we have also all those subsidies for and financial helps for the end users. So if they want to buy an electric bicycle, they can have up to 500 euros of financement and 50% of the price of the bicycle. For clean trucks, they can have bonus up to 50,000 euros. Cars up to bonus for electric cars up to 7,000 euros, and malus for polluting cars up to 12,000 euros. So we have all these things in terms of also financial helps for the end users to help them adopt new means of transportations. And then there are massive investments of the authorities to build facilities. So for example, in the recent years, getting back about bicycles, well, we invested over 300 million on building new cycling paths for the bicycles. And those are massive investments, and it's crucial for us, and it's not easy at all because as you know, Paris, the streets of Paris are pretty narrow. There are many historical buildings, so it's all the urban renovation and rethinking of the urban life of all citizens in harmony with all the historical parts that there are in the city. So it's it's a real challenge and it's very expensive as well.
Yeah, I can imagine. And we see the change happening on the ground in Paris indeed. When we had autonomy in Paris, just in March, we went on a cycling tour throughout the city with Polish politicians, and they could see how the city is tremendously changing. And we are trying to undo the legacy of decades of car-centric planning in cities, and that requires political leadership. And it's clear that this is something that Paris is showing. But what is also interesting is how cycling infrastructure is being rolled out on the regional level across Ile-de-France, actually in parallel with RER, so the regional express public transport network. And I think there's a lot of untapped potential still when it comes to using the e-bike for longer distances beyond the typical 5-kilometer range of cycling. So I really hope that we can give that a push as well. The rollout of e-bikes hand in hand with the rollout of long distance cycling infrastructure could really reduce the negative impact of incoming commuter traffic by car tremendously as well. So let's hope that continues to develop in that direction. Maybe picking up on that cycling point, Thomas, Berlin has also been a forerunner in the rollout of COVID pop-up bike lanes, for example. Is this something where you see that those temporary interventions will become permanent?
Yes, that's definitely the case. So we have temporarily biking lanes established in a large number of, I would say, large number of main streets, main roads in Berlin, and at least some of them will become stable, to say so, will become a long-term activity there. They started as a pop-up cycling pathway, but nowadays they are moving to permanent applications. So I think this is one positive effect of the pandemic situation, to see what is possible if you have the need to react very fast, to have some activities that are not follow the usual pathway, and it shows what is possible, yeah, if you are forced to act.
Yeah, it has really shown as well that also the public sector can be fast and agile, not just the private sector indeed. Paris is also more and more positioning itself as the 15-minute city. I don't know if this is something you have come across also in your work, so that services become available within a 15-minute range by bike or on foot. Maybe is that something that Berlin is looking at as well, because there is such an inherently close link between urban planning and the use of urban space and mobility planning.
There's a plan, a future plan for the cycling infrastructure. For example, fast ways coming from out of the city to the inner city. I do not have the exact figure in mind, but there are plans for at least 10 to 12 of these fast lanes. This of course takes some time. This is part of the long-term planning given by the Mobility Act. So cycling was one of the first chapters that has been concluded. As I mentioned, new mobility is still in preparation, commercial transport as well, but cycling was one of the first, and there are clear plans. Not everything is going so fast as it would be, as we wish to, but the pop-up bicycle race could be a good example. Maybe they can pass the way to how to accelerate also the planning processes, the construction processes for the fast lanes. But there is definitely a long-term plan, very ambitious plan, in order to enhance the share of active mobility towards a motorized.
Okay, great.
I just wanted to add something on this 15 minutes challenge. I believe that the mass also plays a major role into that. The fact of showing to people all the alternative that they might have in moving around. Of course, giving them the alternative, but then also promoting the alternative and displaying the alternatives that they have for going around. We have a massive rollout of MaaS in that will take place for the Paris Olympic Games. So in 2024, we did quite a lot of experimentation on that topic with RATP and with consulting agencies such as Capgemini, work with transportation companies and made many tests for thousands of people, and those tests are very encouraging. The idea is really to show to people that they can have alternatives to their own cars, and showing them how actually it can be much more efficient to use these alternatives to achieve their transportation objective, to achieve their the place where they want to go, using multimodality actually. And Île-de-France Mobilité has this challenge of displaying all the alternatives to end users, so that they could actually use all the means that they need for transportation.
Yeah. I'm glad you mentioned it, because I actually wanted to pick up on this point to have as a last discussion point for this chat, and that's indeed multimodality and intermodality. And for that we need both physical integration on the ground through interchanges, mobility hubs, as has been shown in the Albi presentation, and stations where different modes can come together physically and can be easily combined. But we also need indeed this digital integration level through mobility as a service. Because if we want to compete with what apparently is still very attractive, the private car, we have to make sure that all the other modes basically join forces and offer that package of alternatives. Coming back to what is happening here in Berlin, where you have this great combination indeed of physical integration and digital integration, we see that the public authority is taking the lead in mobility as a service. We see that as well in Île-de-France. Is there a particular reason for that? Why you just do not leave the rollout of MaaS to the commercial MaaS actors?
Mobility as a service must be must have a serving function. It must serve, it must support the overall political goals in the city. So it cannot be an operation by itself, just by commercial reasons. It must fit to the political goals we are following in the city. So from our point of view, it's important to bring together the public side with private companies in trustful public-private partnerships, where you have a kind of behavior that's an open-minded behavior, because you need transparency in order to have long-term constructive cooperation between the public and private side. Data is very important. You need to share your data. It could not be a private activity, just to think in blocks. So the public side has to open the data they achieve, and the private side as well, in order to make the best of the different modes, as you said, to comply with the competition. With the private car. It is necessary that everybody puts together his forces to provide very competitive systems in terms of prices, in terms of comfort, in terms of speed, of course. Travel time must be competitive, and this all needs cooperation, needs sharing data, needs the common spirit. The joint spirit is very important. Otherwise, you will end up in different passes that would finally lose the competition towards the private car.
Very quickly, I see you want to respond to that.
Yeah, I just wanted to say something about the collaboration between Berlin and Paris. We are two major cities in Europe, and actually what is very important that Thomas is saying, and I would like to reinforce, is that everything that they do, everything that we do, we collaborate on those things. We check at each other, improving mobility. We are not competitors on this type of thing. Actually, we collaborate on these things to understand what are the right solutions that work in one city that could be also implemented in other cities. So companies that are doing great things in Paris, well, will be closely checked by the Berlin authorities also to work for Berlin and to bring solution in Berlin. And the same for companies that are doing great things in Berlin, well, we closely look at them and it will be easy for them to reach out with us because actually they work already with Berlin. I think that's a very important thing because doing well in one region opens you also the door to enter into another region in Europe.
Well, that's at the core of what we do as well at Qualis, learn from each other's mistakes and successes and facilitate this peer-to-peer exchange. I'm sure we could continue this conversation for the rest of the day with all the interesting stuff that's happening both in Berlin and Paris, but there are other interesting panels lined up, of course, as well. So thank you very much for your insights and for your leadership in sustainable urban mobility and innovation. Please join me.
Excellent, thank you all for that fascinating discussion. Now folks, it is time for a bit of refueling, to have a coffee break now, coffee pause then. It will just be next door in the room you came through earlier on this morning, so please do help yourselves to drinks in there. And we'll see you back here for 11:20 a.m. So make your way back here around 11:15. Get yourself comfortable. Carry on with the day. Thank you.